Hello and welcome everyone. In this video tutorial, we will understand how we can create an instead of trigger in SQL Server. So we will start off this video tutorial by giving a brief introduction to what is an instead of trigger in SQL Server. Then we will discuss the syntax of how we can define an instead of trigger. Then we will discuss an example, and after this we will cover two more things where we will understand how to create an instead of update trigger in SQL Server, and in the last we will discuss how we can create an instead of delete trigger in SQL Server. So before we move to the very first topic, I would like to tell you that we bring such tutorials on regular basis. So if you like our video, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel and you can also press the bell icon to get regular updates. So with this, we will start off with our very first topic, and let's discuss what is an instead of trigger in SQL Server. Now generally, when we define a trigger in SQL Server, the trigger performs the same operation based on certain base action. However, with the help of instead of trigger, we can perform some other action instead of the specified one. Basically, the instead of trigger in SQL Server is a trigger that allows us to skip the delete, insert or update statement in a table or a view, and it executes some other statement defined inside the trigger instead. So when we define instead of trigger on any of the operations, for example insert, delete or update, the insert, delete or update statement will not be executed at all. In other words, the instead of trigger is used to skip the DML statements and execute some other statement. So I hope with this you got an idea about what is a instead of trigger. Let's discuss the syntax, how we can define an instead of trigger. So we will start off by using this create trigger option. Then we need to specify the name of the trigger. After this, we either need to specify the table name or the view name for which we want the trigger, and then we need to specify the instead of statement. And with the instead of statement, we can either create an instead of insert, delete and update triggers, and then we can specify our SQL statement within this body of the trigger. Now the main use of creating an instead of trigger is on views only. So let us discuss an example on how we can create an instead of trigger in SQL Server. For this, what we will do, we will first have a view in my system. So I will move to my SQL Server Management Studio from here. In my Management Studio, I have created a view. Let me show you that view first. So I have this view that is state details. If I show you the script for this. So what we are doing by creating this view, so there are two tables. I have one country table which contains country names. Let me show you that as well. So in the country table, I have certain country names and their alpha 2 code. In the same manner, I also have some state names in the states table. So if I show you that, here is my states table. Now in the state table, you can see instead of getting the country name, I have used country ID. So what I have done, I have created a view which will fetch the state ID, state name and country name using an inner join, and it will basically return both state name and country name. So let me show you the result of this view. For this, I simply need to write star from and then the name of the view. So here you can see I got the ID. This is the state ID, this is the state name, and here the country name. Now what will happen if I try to perform the insert operation on this? We all know that using a view we can also perform the insert and update operation. Now what if I try to perform the insert operation in this view? So here you can see the example. I have used the insert into statement on the view, and I'm trying to insert this new record, that is New Jersey and United States. Let me click on execute. Now if I try to perform the insert operation on this view, I will get an error because in the view one column is coming from the country table and one column is coming from the state table, and we cannot perform such operation using a view. For this, what we will do, we will create an instead of insert trigger in SQL Server, and this trigger will be created on this particular view. What is the role of the view here? The role of the view is to perform the insert operation on the states table so that we get the new state value, and view value will be automatically updated based upon the table value. Let me show you this. So here what we are doing, we are creating a trigger with this name, that is trg view state details, and we are creating this trigger on this view, and this time we are creating this instead of insert trigger. Now what is the role of this trigger? First, this trigger will fetch the country ID from the states table, and this is the code for this. We are basically using the inserted magic table to fetch the country ID, and then we are using this country ID to make an insert operation in the states table. but we also need to check that whether the country ID is null or not, because if the country ID is null, then eventually the record will be invalid. So this is what we are doing in this trigger. First we are fetching the country ID from the state table using the inserted magic table. Then we are checking if the country ID is null. If it is null, then we will throw an error, that is invalid country name. And in the last, if the country ID is not null, we will perform the insert operation on the states table. Let me click on execute. So in this way we have created the trigger. Now let's perform the insert operation again. Let me click on execute, and in this way the record has been inserted. So if I show you the states table, so I will try select a string from states. Here you can see New Jersey record has been added, and if I try to fetch the view, that will also be updated based on the value of the table. So here you can see New Jersey is also there. So I hope with this you understand how we can create an instead of trigger in SQL Server. Now let's move forward and let's discuss another example where we will discuss how we can create an instead of update trigger in SQL Server. In the previous example we have seen how we can create an instead of insert trigger in SQL Server. Now we will move to the next operation, that is update. Now if we look into the result of the view, here we can see there are certain mistakes. For example, in the state name there is one column with name XYZ which is completely wrong. So again, just like we have created a trigger which was performing some other operation based on insert statement, we will create another instead of trigger which will be triggered based on update operation. So let me show you the code for this. So here you can see the code. Here we are creating a trigger. This is the name of the trigger. Again we are creating a trigger on the view. This time we are creating a trigger of instead of update, and what this will do, it will perform the update operation on the state table instead of performing the update operation on the view. And for this task we are again using the inserted magic table. Let me click on execute. In this way the trigger would be created. Now let me perform the update operation. So in this I would update the value of state name to California, where the ID is 4. So if you look closely, the XYZ value is there where the ID is 4. Let me show you once again. Here it is. So I will update the value and I am performing the update operation on the view. Let me click on execute. Here you can see one row has been affected. So if I select string from the view, that is this. Now if I check, here you can see the value is been modified from XYZ to California, and in this way we can also create an instead of update trigger in SQL Server. Let's move forward and let's discuss about another type, which is instead of delete trigger. So just like we were not able to perform the insert and update operation directly on a view, we cannot perform the delete operation as well directly on a view. For this, again we will create an instead of delete trigger. So here you can see we are creating this trigger, and this time I have specified instead of delete. Now what this trigger will do, it will first fetch the state ID using the deleted table, because we are going to perform the delete operation on the view. What it will do, it will use the deleted magic table and store the state ID in that deleted magic table, and we are fetching the state ID from that table. If the state ID is null, then it will return an error message that the ID is invalid. If we find the state ID, then it will perform the delete operation on the states table using the particular state ID. So let me click on execute. So in this way we have created this trigger. Now we need to perform the delete operation. So here you can see I am performing the delete operation on the view where the ID is 5. If I show you, the ID 5 is Arizona. Let me click on execute. In this way the operation is being performed. Now let's check the view. I will type select star from view, and here you can see after ID 4 the next record is ID 6, that is why. With this we have successfully deleted the record using the view. Now with this we have come to the end of this tutorial session, where we have understood how we can create an instead of trigger in SQL Server. Moreover, we have also covered different type of examples, like how we can create an instead of insert trigger, how we can create instead of update trigger, and how we can create and instead of delete trigger in SQL. I hope you have learned something new from this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you really like this video, you can press the like button, and you can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more tutorials like this. And here are some more suggestions from our side that you can watch. Thank you.